Thank you guys both so much for joining us. So I want to continue the themes that Sandeep and I were just talking about. Katherine, to you first. Kind of where do you see the biggest and most exciting opportunities for 5G right now with dealing with these challenges around business outcomes and sustainability?
Yeah, and it's interesting listening to Sandeep because obviously there's quite a big overlap with what we do, and there's probably two things to think about. The first is how you can use the 5G network as a whole. So, as that's getting rolled out across Europe, but across the world, but across the UK as well. But then also some specific examples which Sandeep talked about really well around private networks. And I think they give us so many opportunities. It's quite hard to know where to start there. But I think to your point about what's driving it, I think that business efficiency and how we can reduce energy. 5G's, we're aiming to be 10 times more efficient with 5G versus 4G by the end of the year. So it's hugely more energy efficient, but it also gives you so much in terms of speed, the latency, and the things you can do with that from a business perspective, whilst also helping the sustainability agenda are just enormous.
Peter, what do you think about that? Do you think the business value is driving and the sustainability value is following, or where's the lead here?
No, I think it's a hard question because, as said here, we need to start small, but we also need to have the scaling option. So we need to have the products available for scaling. And I think for Scania, electric trucks are the next step. That is a step where we need to provide the product and scale up, but also provide the efficiency of the actual transport happening and understand how to make that efficient and how to make the step to electric vehicles. So I think it's the combination of both that gives the kind of the big impact rather than just one or.
And let's continue that example of the electric and connected trucks. Where do you see the opportunities coming from there? Like where is the energy, where is the growth, and where are the challenges?
I think the challenges are many. One is energy, clean energy. That's a lot of talk about that. The other one is to understand which customer can actually electrify what transport in what time frame. And helping out with data from existing networks can help from that. So using the existing transport that they're running and using the measurements from that and then transforming that into, okay, let's take these routes and make them electrified. There's both money in that and it's sustainable and go from there.
Katherine, what about you? Any good examples that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, actually, just to follow on from that,
Sure.
Ericsson's part of the CEO Alliance, and one of the things we've been looking at as part of that is, there's going to need to be 800,000 electrified trucks across Europe, and to enable that, you're going to need about 400,000 charging points. And how do you? They're all going to need to be connected. They're all going to need to work together. So you start to get a sense of how central that connectivity is going to be to solving this problem, but also to just the opportunity that it gives us. And I think and one of the big themes that I bang on about is that it isn't about you build 5G and you build some connectivity and then you've got the answers. It needs to be part of integrated into all our thinking, into our innovation, and I think that's how you get the biggest impact, both from a business perspective and from a sustainability perspective. It all goes hand in hand.
Talk to us more about the integration of that rollout. Like, how are you dealing with, getting the companies and the leaderships on board? How are you thinking about the changes with jobs and the trainings that are needed for people as these technologies develop?
Fantastic question. So from a 5G perspective, yeah. So I mean, it's kind of, I think of it a bit of a snowball. So I think, there are so many different organisations in this infrastructure, plus of course government and regulators also playing a really key part in it, that you need it all to build on each other. So, we see at Ericsson, we see that we've got a really key role to drive some of the idea and the thought leadership, and, a bit like Sandeep's talked about in terms of some of these pilots, and we've got, lots of examples of those. But then the whole piece needs to sort of snowball on, and you need companies like Scania who are really embracing it to go, actually, this is how it can work. But you also need the infrastructure, but the infrastructure won't get built if it's not getting used. So it's sort of, yeah, and we saw with 4G, if you rewind and you look at 4G, actually the thing that kind of really got 4G going was those applications and the usage. More from a consumer perspective, but you look at things like Uber, that's when everybody went, I really get it now. And 5G will be the same, but I think enterprise is much bigger for 5G. Consumer's still important, but you know, the opportunity for business is huge.
And any learnings from 4G that you're applying to 5G, especially as you think about enterprise?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the main ones are around, you know, actually that energy efficiency and how we can make it more sustainable. So say our target by the end of the year is that 5G will be 10 times more efficient than 4G, and we're at 9.3% more efficient at the moment, so we are well on our way. I think we need to go faster. I think what we saw with 4G is actually the countries that embraced 4G quickly and got the rollout out, got ahead. So you look at Asia and the countries which really got ahead with 4G got the benefit from it, and Europe is at risk of lagging behind Asia, and well, it is lagging behind Asia and America on 5G rollout.
And Peter, to you, I would love to hear more about how you guys are thinking about the implementation of this. You know, maybe a bit to my earlier question about jobs and how you guys are thinking about reskilling and retraining and what might need to be done, or you know, enthusing people about this shift.
Well, the shift from diesel to biofuel or electric, that's happening. I mean, we are investing heavily into that, on both parts, because both parts will be needed. Electric vehicles will be in the future, or that type of vehicle will be very important, but also in the transition period we need to have biofuel, so that is also happening. But looking at it from the perspective of data connectivity, of course that is also going to happen. And as a fact, at Scania R&D today we have more software engineers than hardware engineers. So the shift has already happened, and we are more embracing making sure that our customers can take on the shift and that they can be sustainable, efficient, and profitable. And transport industry is a low margin industry, so it is in the margin that you will have to fight and ensure that you can bring customer value all the way through. So, and this will incorporate a larger portion of the workforce, not just R&D. This will be all the way out to the workshops, to the salesperson, and all of that. So enabling them with the tools of persuading customers to go electric, that is kind of one of the things that we're working with now. There we use connectivity data and tools to bring the sales cycle down for electric vehicles.
That's interesting, that the shift from kind of more hardware engineers to software engineers. Do you feel like that is changing a little bit of the culture of the company? Are you feeling like a little bit more of a tech company rather than a transportation company?
I have had the idea for marketing to say that we are a sustainable tech company right now. They haven't took that bait yet, but I think we actually are. And the fact is that we're coming into more of the tech companies' discussions from a point of view rather than to just be a provider of hardware. And that comes in also when we're working with autonomous vehicles. We will be in another part of the value chain because we will have to integrate the autonomous vehicles into the customer's IT system on a totally different scale than we are today.
You know, we're talking a bit about vehicles, but Katherine, what other examples have you guys been working on? Any other cool ones that you think bring this to life for people?
Yeah, some really good ones. I mean, just to finish, because I guess I didn't quite answer your question on skills, and that's what prompted me as well. I mean, I think the software piece is really key, and also cloud. You know, so what we're also seeing is what connectivity enables you to do is to move a lot of your activity further towards the edge, and that changes that skill set as well in cloud and software, rather than it just being a fixed hardware, which maybe 15 years ago would have been. But other industries, I mean, I think Sandeep's points around the pandemic are really interesting, because I think it's made people, all of us, think really differently about how we work. And as a result, it's really inspired quite a lot of big fundamental changes for some companies. And that's where you can see the benefits. I mean, if I look at some of the factories that we're working with, there's Hyperbat, which is an electric car battery manufacturer in the UK we work with. And one of the things they've done is they've introduced a private network, which means that they can work in a virtual reality world on a battery from hundreds of miles apart. And they can sort of go, you know, my non-engineering, go left a bit, right a bit, you know, can you change this? And they can work on that virtual reality world without having to travel, or in reality what was happening was sending lots of emails. So the pandemic's forced people to rethink what they do, but it's also made people go, actually, do I need to travel, or can I use the technology to change that?
And then that has environmental impacts as well.
Massive. It makes the company more efficient. I mean, the other thing Hyperbat are doing is they're removing they're looking to remove the wires from their production lines so they can move that around more easily. It makes it loads more efficient and effective, and the environmental benefit's huge.
That's interesting. Are you seeing an increased desire from companies post-pandemic to be like, okay, we're open to how can we do this more virtually? How can we do this in a different way?
I think so. I think it's still a little bit niche. So again, as Sandeep said, I think there's definitely these trailblazers who have got it and, are embracing it and transforming their business and starting with the business problem and, how can we be more efficient? But there's still lots of organisations who haven't quite got their head around it. And I guess that's the ask is this is coming and the benefits are huge.
And for those trailblazers, why do they got it? I thought it was a weird, funny way of saying it, but you know what I'm saying? Like, where is there like a trait? Is it the CEO? Is it the industry? What is the thing that you think is catalyzing the people who are actually jumping on this?
It's really interesting. I think for some, it's you've got someone who particularly does get it from a techie perspective. I think also, the pandemic did make some companies go, oh gosh, we just can't do it. I mean, another really good example from within Ericsson is when we're doing rollout of 5G masts, masts in general, we'll send out drones now to create a digital twin of that mast and that tower, and then we can have different people work on it without having to travel. So, sometimes, and while we could travel, it was much harder. So actually, that came much quicker as a result. So I think it can be external triggers, but also some people are just embracing it more quickly. Do you agree with that?
What do you think, Peter?
Yeah.
Who are the trailblazers and who are the followers? I think that's a trick question because I assume that people in this room are the trailblazers. Right? But the question is, how do we scale up the trailblazers and how do we create the fight for sustainability, as we will have to fight, to be a fight not just about sustainability but operational benefits and revenue. Because if we don't chase the revenue and we get the sustainability, there will be a lot of these events that we are seeing now. The COVID is maybe not a sustainability event, but for sure the war in Ukraine or the crisis in Bangladesh as it is right now. And those kind of events are coming to an extent that will be more events, they will be higher. And the resilience we build in by using more data and understanding the real situation, chasing the revenue, chasing the operational efficiency, not just for the small scale, but for the big scale. So the bigger question is, how do we go from 5G, IoT data into small-scale experiment, into the big-scale experiments that are kind of 1 + 1 is actually 3, or at least 1.1 for each of the involvements. So I'm not sure that there is an easy answer to it. I think it's a super complex problem.
Katherine, do you have an answer?
I think it's back to that snowball. I think, once people see those trailblazers and get inspired, you have to keep up, don't you? I mean, that's the joy of the competitive world that we live in. You'll get left behind if you don't. So there's a carrot, which is you can do all this fantastic stuff and you can be more efficient and effective and the sustainability benefit, but the sort of stick is if you don't, you're going to get left behind and both your customers will question it, but also from a business perspective, you're going to have a higher cost base. So, pays off.
So is it really the businesses now having to build that case to say, we have to make this change, we have to invest in this, or 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, we're not going to be in business anymore, or business is going to fall? Or do you think there's going to be more external pressures, like are there going to be, policy changes? Are there going to be customer changes? Either of you, take it away.
No, I think that, as said previously also in the big room, the policymakers, they will raise the bar on what's acceptable lowest level. And I think that's what policymaker can do. It takes time, standardization, etc. And the trailblazers are on top, right? Mm-hmm. And the question is, how can we get the good innovations and the good things down as quickly as possible? Because that will drive our ability to save this planet as fast as possible. So by using the trailblazers and getting it down, I think that is. So I think that the area for business that are not either trailblazers or barely making it, it's going to be smaller. And I think we are seeing that already now. The pace of innovation is going faster. And as software is eating the world, as somebody said a couple of years ago, the cycle for software is now maybe sometimes a limiting factor for the change. It is not a 5G rollout. We have that. Electric vehicles will come. But the question is, how do we combine the different parts into values And who is going to do that? And how can we find the trailblazers, scale them up? And policymakers is coming from the bottom, and the trailblazers from the top. So how do we make that happen faster?
Go ahead.
No, I was just. I think the other thing is sometimes it can look huge, but I mean one of the other interesting pieces of analysis we were going through is actually if you look at sort of the 4 sectors where you can make the biggest impact around energy, manufacturing, transport, you can see that technology can drive a 15% reduction in their emissions from those sectors, but actually if you add 5G on top of that, you get another 5%. So, you can be quite targeted that there's certain industries where you're going to have a disproportionate impact from a sustainability perspective and almost certainly from a business perspective. And I mean, to put that into context, that is slightly more than the 33 million cars that are in the UK in terms of the impact that has on the environment and on sustainability. So that's a massive difference you can make.
It's a huge difference, yeah. One of the themes that's come out a bunch of times in the conversations around this is Europe's role with technology and whether Europe is does it have this stuff that is needed to make big tech companies work here, make big technological changes. I think there's been a little uncertainty about whether there's kind of some things holding things back here. I would say it's the opposite for sustainability. If you were going to say anywhere in the world is a leader in sustainability, Europe is the leader by far, and then the rest. I'm here from New York. We're trying to catch up still. Many other places are trying to catch up. What do you think about that combination of kind of like being a leader in sustainability, but maybe being a step behind in technology? Peter, what do you think? Do you think that's a good combination, or can one pull the other?
Yeah, I think that is the edge.
Yeah.
To have the sustainability edge and then be good enough on technology and combining those, and that's what we're trying to achieve. And I think that Europe has an advantage here, and if we can get use of that and get the partnership with the right people in the right room to take the right decisions, then we can speed it up. We will not get that from the policymakers. We should get that from us. And we need to take that kind of leap of faith of doing that. And we're part of a couple of alliances, and I think that is a good step. The next step is to get the people on the next level to actually see the benefits, see the revenue, see the combined roadmaps, and take them together and not fight each other and not do that. And I think that's super hard. So we are part of this journey, and we are trying to do it. It's just it gets to be very, very harder to see the North Star on those scientific-based targets. Super easy to see the North Star. What are the revenue targets that we want to do in these areas? Those are not so easy to see, and not how the partnership form around that. But I think we're seeing good examples, like we are doing with our competitors about charging network. Yes, this is something we do together. This is for Europe. We put the money together and we just make it happen. More of those, I think, is going to see. And then we can go sustainable technology sector, maybe.
And Katherine, I know you're leading for UK and Ireland. What would you kind of say are the competitive differentiators for the UK and Ireland in this?
Yeah, and I think I'd probably disagree on one point, which is I don't think we are where we need to be on that 5G rollout. So I think particularly if I take that European view and you compare it to the US and Asia, we are behind, and we do need to get more, because actually, while you might have it in certain urban areas and you've got the private networks, actually that Asia and the US are racing ahead, and you do need it to kind of underpin it. I think that then also, that network will drive the innovation. And to some extent, the market, things like the cost of energy, what we're seeing quite a big focus at the moment of lots of organisations, because the cost of energy goes up. They're suddenly like, this is much higher on our agenda. It's costing a lot of money. So, as that happens, the innovation will kick in and the network needs to be there behind it.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I'm asking you the same question again, because I don't think I totally got an answer.
No, I don't think I have.
But you answered Peter's. But thinking about the UK and Ireland specifically, what would you say are kind of? I know the energy. You're spinning the energy price in a good way. That's kind of forcing the renewables conversation here and forcing adaptation. But anything else do you feel like?
I think it's a really long answer, isn't it? I think So where are we? We are slightly ahead of Europe in terms of that well, certainly on a par in terms of the connectivity piece. So we're at about 50% coverage. Population coverage. I don't think we've really embraced how we're going to use it. I think from a sustainability perspective, I think there's other countries in Europe who've really got their head around it, probably the sustainability side, but maybe don't always have the connectivity to back it up. I'm always impressed when I go to Sweden because, you kind of look at the connectivity and just the whole infrastructure. That they are really beginning to embrace it. But it'll be the innovation for me, that private sector innovation with a bit of help from government, that will really turbocharge it. And that's probably, we've got to help that along. And that's our job, kind of collectively to do it. Yeah. So yeah, UK, okay, but I don't know. Sort of middle of the road.
Peter, imagine we're having this conversation in 5 years. What do you think is going to be the biggest difference?
First, I think that we will see the electric vehicles much more saturated, especially in urban areas, and where we will probably see that we're also starting to shut down parts of the city because walking is better, and we can actually see that transportation works. I think we also will start to see the autonomous vehicles taking offload, and that we can have transportation happening on off-peak hours, especially in condensed cities like London. You don't need the transportation on the street because you can run it on night. I think we'll actually be there. I'm an optimist. I don't think that will be as fast as everybody says, but especially on the autonomous side, it's going to take time. But for some parts, it will be there. And I think we have solved the energy crisis. We have realized that we have to accelerate the investment in renewable energy significantly, and we can't wait 10 years to build power plants, super big power plants. We will have changed that. So I think that those are 3 technology investment areas that we will see totally different from now. And then maybe the life is better.
Hope so. Fingers crossed for all of us. Katherine, what about you? What do you think in 5 years or so will have changed?
I think we will be at a point where you'll take that connectivity for granted. I really hope that you'll go everywhere, and that super fast, super low latency connectivity will just happen. And then that just enables so much. I think where you'll see the biggest impact the fastest, some of those areas you've talked about, but they're the slightly more dangerous jobs, the jobs people don't want to do, and the ones that are kind of expensive and high risk. So you're looking at things like, lorry driving cranes, for example, visiting remote sites in bad weather. All of that stuff, we'll probably be turning around and going, gosh, we used to send someone out in a storm to go to a remote location, and, wow. So I think it will make a massive difference to quality of life and business efficiency and safety.
Great. I want to ask the two of you the same last question that I asked to Sandeep. What do you need from the rest of the people in the room here? So you're thinking about other peers, other technology leaders. What would you love to see them doing? Peter first, and then Katherine.
Dare to be a trailblazer. Dare to experiment and find the revenue fast, so you can be faster in teaching others. And I think take the opportunities to do cross-section and not stay just within your path, and find those kind of areas where you innovate faster than the rest of the world is innovating, and where sustainability, if we are on this path on not hitting 1.5 degrees, we will see more dramatic effects in our society. The planet will survive, but will the humans survive? That's the question. So take the opportunity to speed up this, and don't do it on your own. Find a partner, find somebody in adjacent areas where you can combine your money, your talent, and your outcome, and help your customers to be sustainable and profitable.
Great. Katherine, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'd probably come at it from 2 directions, actually. I'd say one is, what are the things that you can test and trial, to Sandeep's point, so you can kind of start doing it? What's the innovation you can feed in? But I think my other challenge would be, actually, I think we all need to take a step back and think of some of the problems we're trying to address in society. And there could be a completely different answer to many of the problems with the connectivity that we have. And they're the really interesting innovations where, honestly, they'll make the biggest impact on sustainability, but also, they'll be the business ideas of the future. So I think creatively and carve out the space to think about how this massive change in connectivity and the future can work for you.
That's great. So it's an exciting opportunity.
Really exciting.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for joining me. Everyone join me in thanking Katherine and Peter.